It's your
All right, we ready to go? All right, 8:05, Wednesday, July 10th, calling the meeting to order. First order of business is approval of the minutes. Would like a motion and a second if we could.
Motion to approve.
Anyone second?
I'll second. It's Luke.
Any opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Minutes are approved. Victoria, do we have any citizens to comment with us today?
Nope, we don't have any citizens, none online.
All right, we'll skip down to reports and presentations and turn it over to staff.
Oh. There is an item on the agenda. We kind of already went over that. So this presentation, I'm very sorry. Susan put an item on here just to update you on it. So this kind of also ties into work that the city council has us doing as well, related to a sports task force, a sportsplex task force. So some of the information that the board found was very appropriately timed with what we have going on now. Hi, welcome. So, like I said before, I'll send the report to council and see if they have any questions and if they want a formal report. And then if they want us to dig into anything further, then they can give that direction. But I think it's great information. Thank y'all for
And
putting it together.
is the final version on the shared drive now?
Oh, have we put it on there? No. But we'll put it on there. Susan has.
In case any of the members of the board would like to see what's at least the draft of what we were going to present to Brian
Okay.
for his commentary.
Yes, and Susan took your presentation and she kind of put it in the format that council likes to see. Took out some of the wording from it, just made it easier to digest in a presentation. But yet, I think it'll all be attached as a backup material. You know.
Right.
So we'll put it on that shared drive, and we'll send the link out one more time just in case. You know, put it at the top of your inbox. So if you want to look for it, you can. Cover report. Okay. Now, the sales tax staff report. Okay, so if you look on a few pages back, page 9, we have the sales tax report here. So it looks like we're in a really good position. So year to date, we are up, bless you, 2.61%. So I think consistently, if you look on the fifth column, comparison to budget fiscal year 2024. So this is year over year, we're up 2.61% year. And then if you go all the way over to the second to last column, that very bottom one says 10%, 10.32%. So compared to last year, our sales tax that we are receiving is up 10%. So, and we only anticipate this growing even more because of all of the new stores that are coming in. We have quite a few retail coming down the line, several new restaurants. So it's remained positive. You know, throughout the year. So this is great news for us. Okay. And I just want to make sure Susan is it now. Yes. And then the board member updates. Well, let me just share another quick update. I know I have an update on the Economic Development Strategic Plan that I'm working on. So I have a draft that I sent to the city manager and he gave me some feedback. So the city is working on an overall strategic plan for the entire city. And then almost every department has their own plan underneath that. And so I've been working on an economic development plan, and it's coming along nicely. I think there's some like 5 major goals that we'd like to accomplish. And, I've put the board in there as support for some of those goals. And they're obviously recruitment of local industries that will pay higher wage jobs than what we have now. From the research that I've done, we found that the wages of people that stay in Kyle and live in Kyle and work here are rather low compared to even the county's wages. So we want to make sure that if we're incentivizing businesses to come here, that they're paying average wages that are 80,000 and above. I mean, that's what people are staying in Kyle too. So there's a big amount of people that leave. There's a mass exodus of people every morning that go into Austin, and they're usually going in for jobs that pay 80,000 and above. So how do we keep them here? Is we recruit those industries that'll pay at least that amount to our residents. And so there's a lot of research that went into that. So I can share the full report with you when it's ready. And then another one would be the sports the sports complex project that we're working on here in Plum Creek. If any of you have time, or it'll be recorded so you can go back and watch it. But this coming Tuesday on the 16th, we'll have a big report to City Council and presentation on the sports complex and what it could look like, some of the renderings, some of the uses could be. And it'll be a presentation by Stantec, which is a firm that we hired to design the concept. And then Hunden is another firm that we hired to help with the financial feasibility of the project. So it'll be a live presentation by them. Anyhow, so I think that's going to be a big economic driver for the city. So it'll be real important for it to be in our goals to support that project and also recruit the ancillary businesses that come with the sports complex, which will be, retail, hotels, entertainment. So the goal is not only to just, be a complex for the local community, but we want it to be a regional draw. So hopefully people from North Austin, maybe even the Dallas area would come here for this, to have tournaments here of all kinds. Branding is also another topic that we want to take on. The city had the somewhat tourism branding of the pie capital of Texas, but I think we've all realized that maybe we're moving on from that, and we are so much more than that. So one of the topics in the strategic plan will also be branding and how we tie that to the overall city's mission and vision. Healthcare is also another one. We want to be sure that we continue to be the premier healthcare provider for the whole county and the southern region. So we know that we have you as a great partner. We have the community college that's also going to have a health facility here, a health and nursing and science facility here as well. So we want to, and then the possibility of the other healthcare providers that are coming to the area. We want to make sure that we are continuing to work closely. It's great workforce development and also just providing good amenities to our residents. And then those are definitely the higher paying jobs that we're looking for. So supporting the healthcare industry. So I will be presenting that plan to City Council the first or second meeting in August. And I don't know if the timing will work with presenting it to you all at the next meeting in a formal setting like this. So maybe what I'll do is send it to you ahead of time, and then you can provide something on anything that you think you'd like to see different, or that you could make suggestions on. I already talked to Mike about it as well, and so he's offered his help to look at it. So that's where we are on the strategic plan.
Before we move to board updates, I just thought we should mention the openings on the record that we have on the board and talk about when our next meeting.
Oh, yes. Okay, so we have two openings on our board, two seats open. It's 3 and 6. Yes. Okay, seats 3 and 6. Both of those openings are on the website. So if anybody, if you know anybody that would like to apply. We also have an opening for an ex officio that's reserved for the community college. So we've already spoken to them about identifying the appropriate person to recommend. So then we should have, a full board at that time.
Are we gonna be on the first Monday, or do too many people have conflict?
Yeah, that's the other question is, do we want to continue meeting at this time? In the morning, the time, and also the date of the week. I know we were going to try to move it to maybe this first Monday,
Wednesday.
the first Wednesday of the month, but I know, Eddie, you have a conflict for August, right?
Yeah, I'm,
And well, Luke, you had a conflict for the second.
No, I'm just out of town the first week.
Oh, okay, and then so were you. So,
yeah, on the 31st through the 17th of August. So if there's a meeting in there, I'll have to miss it.
oh, but does that run into the second meeting as well? No, because the 14th.
So the question would, if we have,
But Luke will be here, right, on the 14th, August 14th?
Yeah.
Okay, can we host it on the 14th and then would you run the meeting?
Sure.
Okay. Would be good.
And then
Well,
just a
we
quorum
think it-
count, though, is that if we are missing 2 members, we're down 1 in person, do we have enough to still have quorum in present or in
Yeah,
person?
we'll have to make sure that Jenna is here for that meeting, so.
do we have to have 4, even though we only have 5 active? 5
No.
positions, or do we have?
That's a good
Anyway,
question.
we'll
We'll check.
But
But if not, we will be making sure, up to that date that Luke, you're still available, Spencer, Julian, and then Jenna. We'll make sure that she make it as well.
It's the 14th, correct?
The 14th, yes, at 8 a.m.
I'll send out.
Okay, so before we get into the looking at the small business permit fee waiver policy, does anyone have any updates they want to give to the board?
I don't know if it's an update, but I've got a topic that I want to raise for potential conversation down the road. And it's something actually that Calvin and I spoke about. We're in stage 3 in terms of the drought response. And it sure seems like this part of Texas is going to have this issue for the long term. So as we think about how we're incentivizing businesses to behave as they come here, looking at this through the lens of both attracting candidate companies to come here, and then also just from a management of resource perspective, I think there's some opportunity to have conversation, not about drought tolerant or drought resistant landscaping, but really a relook at landscaping that we're going to require of businesses with an eye toward, is it really sustainable? And, I've talked about this a little bit before, just my own experience building a facility here in Kyle, the amount of money that we spent to put in grass, to put in trees, to put in irrigation, the 6-figure investment to do that. So as you're coming to Kyle as a company and you're told, here are the aesthetic standards regarding landscaping, it is an impediment for some companies. It's not an insignificant spend. And the blessing that follows, of course, is that every month you pay to water it, and every month it grows, and every month you pay to maintain it. So our bills between water and landscaping are about $3,000 a month. So for my company, 6-figure investment to do the landscaping according to the standards, and then easily approaching $40,000 a year in maintenance from an attractiveness standpoint, it is a mark against us.
Mhm.
We can all hide behind, but we want there to be an aesthetic that, well, great, we also want to drink water.
Yeah.
So I don't know what this board's role should be on this topic, but I'd like for the board to consider what should a point of view be from this board on this topic? Should we have one? Should we present something back to city council that says, hey, we think this should be looked at? And should we be benchmarking what leading cities are doing on this front? Not necessarily the usual suspects that we would compare ourselves to, but what cities have done a tremendous job in having their corporate community support environmental initiatives like resource conservation. And I'd like us to take a look at those cities and look at the policies they've put in place and see what the results have been for them. I don't think it's a stretch when you look at all the warehouse space we have in Kyle. Imagine if you go back 10 years and said, if you're going to build a warehouse, we're not going to require you to put grass in, but we're going to require you to put rainwater collection in. It would have likely been the same price. And then every business who has a big roof in Kyle would be capturing rainwater, which could be used for companies like Granger that come in and do excavation and prepare land for development. They use a tremendous amount of water. I don't know where they get it from, and I don't know what they pay for it. But that's an easy end user to leverage the resource that we're capturing. And then, instead of requiring people to do trees and grass, is it, hey, if you want to do trees and grass, here's the cost for that. So what behavior do we want to elicit from these companies? If companies want to come in and put beautiful yards around their warehouse and lots of trees that require water, should we be requiring them to do rainwater collection instead of relying on the city's water, which needs to be used for every other purpose, including drinking water? It's a resource that doesn't seem to be growing, but our population and industrial needs for that water are certainly growing. So again, I don't know if economic development is the right place for it. I could put a spin on that and say this is a recruiting tool to get more companies to move here, and it's something we should ask of the business community. So I could say, should it be in our purview to do work on it because of that? I'm interested to hear what you all think of that. Again, I'm trying to figure out what impact I want to have on this board, so that we're working on things that really are going to better things for our community.
Yeah.
And this is an item where, hey, if we don't think this should sit in economic development, I'm perfectly comfortable. I can go to Will and planning or start the conversation with other people and say, hey, I think you should take this on. And I'm happy to advocate for that as a member of the board, but not as a board action.
Mhm.
I hope that makes some sense.
Right.
So I would just love to hear anyone's thoughts on this. I've not invested time in this yet, but I think coming off of, okay, we did some work on facility research and sports tourism. Okay, now that's done. So what's on our agenda next?
Mhm.
So this is something that is an interest of mine. I don't consider myself an aggressive environmentalist, but this one to me seems like there's some low-hanging fruit here. Requiring business to spend money anyway, but we're requiring them to spend it on ways that don't help us conserve this resource. So it doesn't make sense, doesn't add up to me. So I serve that up for comment with this group.
I know that the council did direct staff to look at the landscape ordinance, and I need to check with Will and planning to see where he is with that. And if my memory serves me correctly, I believe the city council even asked planning and zoning to take a look at it. But being so close to working with the business community, I think that it could also be something that we maybe work on and look at jointly. So let me do some research and then I'll bring it back at the next meeting. But I think that we could look at the existing landscape ordinance and pulse through it, see what we think about it. And then I don't know if planning and zoning has looked at it yet, but if they have, I'll bring that feedback. And if they haven't, maybe it's something that, we can look at first and then give recommendations to P and Z and then up to council. So I think it's great. It was a topic that was brought up last year as well. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
And I don't think anything's going to be in isolation. Everybody needs water, and I can give you a recent example. So we opened up Cullen Elementary this year, and we have a ribbon cutting on August 2nd. I'm not going to be able to do any landscaping because the city won't provide water to the contractor. Right? We don't get water until we occupy it, till we get our TCO, and so I'm having to pay through the contractor about 10 grand a month to bring in water. And I'm not going to plant all the things that are required because it's going to cost exponentially a lot greater money. So I'm going to open up a school without any of our landscaping because we don't have access to water yet. And so all of it is interconnected. So when I have my ribbon cutting, it's going to look like the desert. But I'm probably going to put signs up all around going, hey, because of water restrictions. But
Where is Cullen?
in Anthem,
Oh.
and so ETJ,
Mhm.
it's not part of the city proper yet. Hopefully will be one day. But then also we just in our last bond passed to have artificial turf put on all baseball, softball because of the water restrictions. And we're gonna in this next bond or the following one have all of our middle schools put in artificial turf because. So I mean, I think it's a good conversation to have. I'm with you. I don't know where it belongs, but we definitely need to be talking about it because it's like gold now.
I have one comment too, just kind of from my experience, and then also just on behalf of Hayes. They have been looking at the one water system that Wimberley kind of implemented and put into their school there. They, as you've probably heard over the years, have had a lot of issues with people taking too much water out of the aquifer, and are having to go to state court for that. But they're also trying to figure out how they can, just on the county level, figure out some conservation efforts for water and making sure development has certain standards for that. And then also, San Marcos has the ability to use reuse water for a lot of things. They have the purple pipe, and I know Kissing Tree, I think water's their golf course with it, things like that. So that's potentially an option. And then the Plum Creek watershed is also kind of looking at different ways of trying to figure out water and what that would look like in development.
So maybe some incentives for people to catch the water.
Well, as we're doling out incentives to companies to help
Oh, yeah.
them offset the costs of doing business here, I just think this opens up, again, aligning behavior with incentives works. So we have
Yeah.
a certain behavior we'd like to see companies embrace when they come here to perhaps consider tying some of the incentives to help us understand your water conservation strategies of your facility that you want to construct. Seems a reasonable question to include in that process. So I think there is a mechanism in that council does award 380 awards or whatever incentives we're going to provide. It's just one more question to ask.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be necessarily a hard requirement, but it could be, well, without this, there are certain things you might not be eligible for. With this, those things are on the table for conversation. So I don't think it would take a monumental shift and a lot of hard policy work in order to, because the incentives are intended to be flexible for the city. Yeah. The incentives drive behavior. They do it now, right? The aesthetics that we want buildings to have. Are you going to have indoor dining and outdoor dining? These are questions right now we're asking. I think these environmental and resource intensive businesses should come to the table with a plan. And at times that plan will be cheaper than the current standards that we put on people. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what I spent on trees in front of my warehouse, but it'll probably be 20 years before any of them impact the view of my dock doors.
Yeah.
So I just don't know if we're achieving what we really want to with the aesthetic standards on landscaping anyway. And the fact that since I've been here, there's been some sort of stage something always. I don't think I've ever been here where it's been like, hey, do whatever you want, wash your car, wash your, water your yard every day. We haven't been there in 4 years. And I don't know the history past that, but my guess is been a lot of restrictive times. So again, I think it's a long-term issue that's here to stay. And I do think it should be looked at.
I think there's a couple different ways you can go about it. And I think with doing a strategic plan right now, it's like perfect timing because it's something that development standards need to have in it likely if you really want people to adhere to those. And then I think you can either add to your economic development policy a specific conservation incentive, or you can just ask the questions and then put it in a 380, depending on how you want it.
The same conversation could be had with solar.
Yeah.
And again, the challenges for our grid in Texas don't seem to be going anywhere but more serious and are going to require very substantial investment where solar is a much less expensive way to meet power needs. And again, I've got 60,000 square feet of flat space on top of my building. I have no idea what kind of power I could be generating. So there are incentives in place already with the state of Texas that can be helpful on that front. But again, I think as we're recruiting companies to come here, is that something we should be talking about? Or should everybody who's going to build a flat roof prepare it for solar as part of, does that become code? I'm not saying we should go and present a change in the building code here, but if you're going to have a roof of a certain size, should you at least have to prepare it for solar, whatever that means? Or again, it's another question we can ask when we're considering incentives. Council is considering, have you contemplated solar? What is your plan? What is your electric usage? Just went through supply chain issues with transformers. Hopefully we're coming through that and getting to a much better place. But this is a very real thing that impacted us, right? We have to put substations in when there's a very substantial development, business development that comes around. So what are the costs of that? I mean, we're requiring people to donate land that they own so that substations can be built to power. So it just seems like on this resource conservation front, there's a lot of conversations a modern forward-thinking city should be having, and we might be having them. I'm not privy to them, and in fairness, I haven't sat in the other meetings from the other departments. But if no one's leading these conversations, should we take them on? Is the question. And the council may say that is outside your lane. You don't need to mess with that, and that's fine. But I think for the city of Kyle not to contemplate these items in this day and time does not position us as a thought leading city, which I would love for us to be.
I love the idea of a resiliency model to where if in times of disaster, if we're still operational at some capacity when neighbors are not, that's an incentive on Kyle to bring more businesses here and to keep operations going when times are tough. We can keep the lights on, get water resiliency. That's a plus in my mind. And that kind of leads to a topic I wanted to bring up was we know yesterday we had internet issues. When was the last time we've had a discussion on or studying the marketplace? Is there adequate competition for internet providers in Kyle? Is that something that we haven't thought about in a while, need to look back into? Are there ways that we could incentivize more competition? And is that the right time to have a discussion?
Yeah.
That way we are less prone to failures when one-off things happen.
We did have this conversation a few years ago.
Okay.
And I bring my pain points to these meetings sometimes because I'm a business owner in Kyle and we're trying to attract people that do similar things. So we should be aware of these things. And the billing for Spectrum to move to optical versus broadband was truly shocking to me. I think I'm paying 6 times what I was paying in Austin. And in Austin, my internet speed was much faster. So there are issues. And when we had the conversation, it was we are trying to present a better marketplace that would entice people to want to compete. It wasn't that the city was saying, we've got what we need and we don't want anybody else. We were, at the time, we were having trouble getting people interested because of the intense infrastructure investment to get started for a company was difficult to overcome. But I think there was an effort, and I forgot who was leading it, to try to get at least one other company who provides internet service to consider Kyle. It's been 2+ years since we've had this conversation, so I don't know if it went anywhere. We didn't take it up as an action item.
Yeah. There's a team that's working with Google Fiber to try to get them out here. And I know that they're also working on there's certain pockets of the city that actually have very not so great Wi-Fi connection. That's kind of this general area. If you ever go by Plum Creek, it's hard to get service in some places. So
We're helping with that.
good. Yeah, I know Melissa's leading that charge. So
Well, we've already entered into a partnership with a company, and they're going to build a tower at Barton Middle School. And then they're building one at our central office site too. So that ought to help everybody in this area.
Yeah.
And then all the carriers can add on to it as they go.
I'm hearing both lane fiber.
Yeah.
I think that goes towards your goal here of our master plan is saying we want companies that are paying at $80,000 around that ballpark within the city of Kyle. If you don't have connection, that's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
right.
I just want to interject. Jenna's not here because of the internet problem. I heard from her after our meeting started.
Yeah.
It's caused some repercussions.
We were completely shut down at our warehouse from shipping out. We could get all the packages ready, and now I have a huge tower of
Ready to
packages
go.
ready to go out.
Yeah.
We were completely shut down from shipping yesterday. But in fairness to Spectrum,
It's a
it's the
one-off.
first time it's happened in
It's
4
a-
years that it was substantial. We've had minutes go by where we had issues, but never
Bless
seen
you.
what happened yesterday. I don't want to paint them as the evil empire. Yes, they're expensive. They did have a bad day yesterday, but
No,
they've
and
been
my
serving
main
our community
point
pretty well.
was ensuring there's good competition in the marketplace is that goal that I would have.
No, I think you're right on. And I think if we haven't talked to Starlink yet, that is a company that is obviously invested in this community. You know, anybody who rents 1 million square feet is a member of the community. So I think we ought to include them if we have in some outreach. Who knows what would result, but if they could give internet to the Ukraine, perhaps we could enter a commercial relationship where we pay for it.
Yep.
And provide them a business opportunity here locally.
We'll check with our IT director and kind of get some, I took some notes, and so I will just get an update for you on what we're doing on this end, and if there's anything that the board can do to help and support it. Okay, so we have about 20 minutes left to discuss the small business permit fee waiver. Topic on here. So if you look towards the last, page 17 on your packet, so it's the last page. I think you brought this up before with everybody. So at the last budget season, the city council put some money into the building department's budget to allow for permit fee waivers for small businesses. So we've been, I don't know if you had time to read through it and have any feedback on it, but, Susan, Lauren, and I spent some time thinking about who we were trying to target with this incentive. How do we identify and how do we differentiate between the small businesses that need it and the truly need it, and then those that could just apply for it? What is the threshold? And when you say small business, that definition is very broad, and who, if you ask SBDC, that's anyone with 500 or fewer employees, but in Kyle, that's not a small business. That's a major employer. That's a hospital for us, so that's HEB. So I think we put in here some parameters around fewer than 10 employees, no more than 2 locations worldwide, annual revenue of less than $1 million, very small scale operations. So this would, and not, these are not at, obviously wouldn't qualify for at-home businesses, but it would have to be someone that's moving into a new space here in Kyle, whether they're building or whether they're moving in and finishing out an existing space. So I don't know if you have thoughts or feedback. We want your thoughts and feedback on this as it relates to how do we identify those businesses that would truly need it, and we're not just approving it to approve it. So I can give you a few minutes to glance over it.
Does the council feel like this is an obstacle for businesses choosing Kyle?
How much are the fees?
It could be
Next question.
$1,300, right?
They recently increased them,
Yeah.
and already
Maybe
you had heard from, before I started, you had heard from businesses who had maybe struggled, small, tiny businesses that struggled.
Yeah, that this would have been maybe like a small bakery that wanted to move in, but they had so many different.
Maybe they're trying to transition from a home business to something. Council has been very interested in encouraging small business and not to give. Of course, this is just my understanding, is to give a little bit more character to our marketplace and not just have chain type.
It's a one-time permit fee. Is it annual or what?
It's one time, so it's when they're moving into their new
Is
facility.
it comparable to Buda in other areas? Or is it, Do
Oh,
they have a
you mean
waiver
what
policy?
we're charging, or does Buda have a similar project?
Both.
Buda has an economic development corporation that gives lots of different grants and things that we're not able to give. So I'm not sure if they have something exactly like this. There are things that they do for small businesses.
Just the funding, their funding mechanism is different than Kyle's. So, but I do know that, what we did recently is we looked at our benchmark cities as well, all of our surrounding communities, and we tried to make our fees comparable to theirs, everything, from our pay, our standards, all kinds of things. So we don't want to be the outliers in the region. So to answer your question, Luke, the fees they would pay in Buda would be very similar to what they would pay in Kyle. But I think, mainly how would we, the eligibility criteria, what do you think about this? How does this identify somebody that maybe, for instance, Laola, when you first started, this could have been beneficial to help you move into your space. It's just another way to also welcome businesses to our community, saying we want you here. Here's a little extra incentive to get you started, because I know there's a lot of startup costs when you first go into your business. And there's some that we realize may be part of a larger franchise that may not need it because of that name brand. I don't want to name names publicly, but you know what I mean. So how would we craft the language to say, we're looking for like the, husband and wife team that wants to start a business. They're from their bakery, baking at home, and then now they want to move into a space. You want to look at the criteria and see what you think about it. Emily, do you have
So
some
just looking at
thoughts?
the franchise comment. It'll be a different entity than the parent company, so it would be considered its own single location, but I get what you're trying to do of
Yeah.
two locations. Because I just don't know how to word that.
Right, and that might help with some of the, that language of no more than 2 locations worldwide, and that kind of helps.
Yeah.
Are we thinking like if someone bought, if they're a franchise owner, are you thinking that's the type of business that we would want to include in this? Like, would we say with the same owner or with the same?
With the same, you're right. Well, and I think because, what council is looking at is those unique business owners that are here locally.
Yeah.
That, probably have a food truck or, and they,
So not someone that bought a franchise location.
I don't, I'll just kind of look at the board and say, what do you think? Do you think that they are the the target that we're looking for that would need something like this, or is it based off of, I want to just make sure that the intentions are good and given to the right person, and not just being handed out to.
And when council allocated funding towards this, they left that open, correct?
Yes, they asked us to bring back the policy and the application. And I think this policy, we kind of drafted from another community, and but have just been, Susan, Lauren, and I have been kind of massaging the language as we go along.
And it will still go before council, but we just wanted to get.
And we talked to our planning and to Melissa, so is the Chief Development Officer who's over planning and building. So there are some planning fees that could be waived, and then primarily there are building permit fees that could be waived.
And that was one of the questions I had, is the first section talks about permit fees, plural, but we don't specify which fees are eligible for this waiver.
It is actually, right. That should be more on the first page.
Oh, yeah,
Gotcha.
zoning site plan and commercial building permit fees. So Spencer, if you think this should be more prominent and also like top and maybe even listed out in bullet points, or
I would specify which ones are eligible. That way it's clear for whoever's applying to it what this is applicable for. And then when it comes to the bullets that we currently have, do you feel that staff currently has the ability to verify compliance? Because you can make a bunch of rules, but if you couldn't verify that you're compliant to it, it doesn't mean anything. Do you feel comfortable as is with these bullet points to enforce it, or would that even be a struggle?
I'm just taking notes here. Unless we had, part of the application could just be the business owner just verifying it and notarizing it and saying, this is your statement of, and this, the statement is true and you meet these qualifications, that's them telling us that that's the case. So,
And that's what it is right now. It does ask those questions and then it has them certify it, but it's not notarized, but it's.
Yep.
AI certified.
We'll also run the application form and policy by our city attorney to see if there's anything more legal jargon we can put in there just to make it more official.
Victoria, two comments. One, under very small scale operations, sole proprietorships is listed there. A lot of small businesses are going to take the form of an LLC. So I don't know if by eliminating LLC cause ourselves a problem we're not anticipating, and that, I put my business in an LLC, not a sole partnership. It still can be a very small operation. So I don't know that that needs to be dealt with. Might be a distinction without a difference. But if we're going to say sole proprietorship, you're starting to get into entity description.
Mm.
So if we're going to get into entity description, do we want to eliminate LLCs? I don't see a reason why we would want to do that. That's probably unintended.
Mhm.
And then I think my broader question is, how are we doing in permitting new businesses that come here in terms of the time it takes businesses to get their permits to be able to move forward with construction? Because I know, again, you guys are going to get my flavor all the time from a perspective of someone who decided to build a business here in Kyle. So for me, the meeting we had where zoning and planning and building and fire, or not fire because that was Buda, but everyone was in the same room around the same table. And this was the only city that did that. And the permitting process was fair and fast. Now, pace of play has changed quite a bit. So my question is, have we kept up? Because before we start giving away budget for whatever good incentive, good reasons we may have, my question is our permitting process a detriment to our recruiting efforts? Because it for a while, it was challenging. And I think the third-party inspectors and some things helped that the city did. But before we give away the budget that would pay for things like that, how are we doing? I don't know how we're benchmarking, how long is it taking people to get their COs?
Yeah.
How long are we making developers wait for inspections? So to me, those are far more significant in terms of, are you going to woo the type of businesses we want here long-term or not? That permitting process for those bigger entities who are going to be in a position to provide the higher wage jobs, how are we doing? Because if
I think that we are still in a good position because that's one of the things that we do talk about, you know, as far as a non-financial incentive, like monetary incentive, is that the speed at which they can still move through the meeting you're talking about is a pre-development meeting. And we still have those every week, every Thursday. They're lined up with different businesses, companies, developers. And some cities charge for those.
Yeah.
We don't. And so we're looking as we move forward, how many of those we're having, who's sitting in those, the amount of leadership you have that sits on those meetings is very beneficial to the developers and business owners. But I think that usually it's not the cities, we do still have that third party inspection team, but we're moving towards wanting to have all in-house inspections and only use them, on a case-by-case basis for much larger projects. So I know that that was one of the priorities of our building department, is to fully staff their team. But I don't think it's a detriment to them. We move them, and Lauren does a really good job too at keeping up, especially with the smaller businesses. Like, let's just say the Faux with us, it's opening up here. She knows the owners. She loves their restaurant. She's helping them through the process. So I don't think that's a hindrance or a delay that we're causing them. We try not to be. If we identify a problem, we try to fix it, and we go quickly to the building department, ask them what they can do to, move things around to help get them, especially if they're waiting on us for something.
I think my point is the time is worth much
More
more
valuable.
than the money.
Yep.
As a business owner, I never even asked what the permit fees were. When I was considering what location to go to, everyone charges permit fees. I assumed no one would be wildly out of range, but I couldn't even get a phone call back from the city of Austin before we had that pre-development meeting. So had visited sites, had met with different departments here, had that meeting, still hadn't had a return phone call from Austin. It made it very compelling that I should not try to build in Austin.
Yeah.
And this was the right place for me to build. So to the extent there were budget pressures, if they existed, I would want that to be part of this conversation, because I wouldn't give away money if we need that money to shore up time to market for these businesses. Because I think it's certainly for the big businesses, it's the driver. For a small business, yes, I acknowledge the permit fees could be more impactful. So I'm not opposed to it. I don't want anyone to feel that. I just think it's all coming out of the same kitty. So are we fully funded where we think we need to be? And if so, this is a great program for a small business.
I'd also thought about maybe if we focus this on certain areas that we want, like if we are redeveloping our downtown, could this be focused on the downtown area as an additional incentive? But, I don't want to leave out the outliers, that might find another spot that's suitable for.
I'm in agreement with Eddie too. Reason I haven't even looked into going to Austin is they just, you hear the stories of how long they take to give you permitted and stuff.
Mm.
If I'm a mom and pop looking to open up, I want to see how quickly I can get doors open versus, like you were saying, this is great, but I'm more interested in how quickly can I start generating sales.
Yeah.
When we came here, once we met with you and Lauren, everything I had heard about not coming to Kyle, you guys were like the opposite. Y'all helped and, were there all the time.
Yeah.
So y'all made it easy. So I think expediting permitting and stuff it would incentivize somebody to come here versus like Utah's and Marcus, even like Austin for us is off the table.
Mm.
I'm not saying we'll never do it, but
Yeah.
it's just, I hear like 7, 8, 9 months to start getting, something going. So for someone that's like us who started out of the garage, as quickly as we can get those doors open, the better. Yeah.
Emily, are any of the other communities that you work with, do you know if they do anything similar or?
I think everybody has something in their policy that just says they can waive or expedite permits, but nobody has a clear plan on that. I'm the only one that I know of Buda that does it for like larger projects. They have their expediter, or I forget what the actual title is, but
I know
that's not,
that, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they're development navigator.
Yeah.
or-
But I haven't heard that going through the process for permits in Kyle is any sort of hindrance to companies. I have heard that for San Marcos.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
uh,
Austin's, yeah.
Austin,
its own
definitely,
thing,
yeah.
so.
The expediter is a really interesting concept because it's intimidating for a small business owner, myself included, to try to understand every hoop you need to jump through to get from here to open. It's almost an impossible task. It's almost like, why would someone do it? But having, I would rather, let's say we think we're going to attract 100 businesses that are going to apply for this, and each one's going to benefit $1,000. So that's $100,000. What if you hired an expediter, salary, wages, benefits, and that person's job was, in addition to the heroic work you and Lauren do now with everything else you have on your plate, I would be more inclined to fight for you guys to get an additional headcount. Specifically say, this is the person where, and it doesn't have to be just small businesses, but it could be the big ones that are going to bring the targeted wage base that you're looking for. That, if you're just looking at the same money, and I'm guessing what the number might be, I have no idea. Maybe it's 50,000, maybe it's 100,000.
100,000 is what we asked for in the budget. So.
What if that 100,000 is it a better use of the city's money to look at, perhaps benchmark some of these other expediters in other marketplaces and see what their benefit is. Same money, achieving the same purpose, making it easier for businesses to come here. Just a different way to spend it. I don't want, the city may
We've been
already.
looking at both, yeah, that I think we talked about that because I feel like Lauren plays a lot of that role, just with her knowledge of being in the building department and then working with businesses. So you're right, but you bring up a really good point. So this, the feedback's great, and I'm happy to see it from a different viewpoint, from a business owner's viewpoint of more important to, make sure the permits are done on time, get us open on time, remove those barriers than waiving probably a $3,000.
And important to note, it's not to get favors or to work around something, just being told where are the hurdles we need to jump over. And if it's left to us to figure out, we're asking our builder, hey, do you know what we need next? Like, are we on track? And which is, a lot of builders are great and have a lot of that information. But I just think if the goal is make it easier for businesses to come here, there's 100 tools you could invest in. Waiving permit fees is one of them, not the only one.
I would say if you are trying to do it for more of a position, it could also look more beneficial to larger companies because the permitting process is different everywhere they go. And so having someone who just says, here's what you need to do next, here's where you're at, here's your timeline, is really beneficial to them because they just want to know time, basically. How's this coming along? How long is it going to take me?
Well,
and even international companies are always thinking what to do here.
We've worked with some of those that are also hard. But I think a lot of times we find the disconnect is also between the contractor and the business owner, and the business owner is talking to us and we're like, have you talked to your contractor? Well, they're, just different stories that are not matching up. So that's where we run into, and we help solve some problems that way too. So, okay. Well, thank you all. This is definitely something for us to think over. We'll talk with our team here internally about it. And then I'll get back with you and kind of see what this is a very useful. Thank you. And we kept it on time. Right? Okay, so next meeting is August the 14th at 8 o'clock. We'll send the calendar invites to everybody.
We get a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Julian, I have a quick question. Can I tidy up because someone else is using this room?
Yeah.